Okay, we should be on Facebook momentarily. Okay. We can still say Shabbat Shalom for a few more moments as we finish and savor the last little bit of Shabbat with a story that Rabbi Rachel Esserman will be telling us.
Hello. Tonight's story again has to do something with food, which it's funny because it's another is from the Israel folk tale archives, which I'm greatly expanding what it is because it's very short, but I also am mixing it up with, I know I read another version of this somewhere and was looking for it and could not find it. So I'm kind of combining what I knew from the two versions. Is basically the same idea. That's actually with folk tales. If you were to get, they spread to different things. It's the same thing with fairy tales. I was interested when I was in college, took a class on fairy tales and folk tales, and some authors would collect them from different parts of the world. And it's amazing when you hear like the 6 to 8 different ways that there was a Cinderella or a Sleeping Beauty or a Snow White or a Little Red Riding Hood. So anyway, this story is about smell, okay? So there was a poor man who really had no money and he depended on the kindness of others. He couldn't work, he was disabled, and he would go and get alms from the people of his town. And sometimes people would be nice enough to give him a little bit of bread here, a little bit of something there, because they tried to take care of all their own. Not everybody in the town, of course, was as nice as this, but he ignored those people and went to those who helped him. But there was a bakery. Now, you all know, if you walk by a bakery, I swear sometimes they send a fan to send a smell out, right? That smell of cinnamon, that smell of chocolate. When there were years, actually, when I was not eating any sweets at all for dietary restrictions, I would smell food. I had people who thought that I was a little nuts, but I said, you know, I get some sort of emotional satisfaction out of just smelling this food and having that when you couldn't eat it, but there was just something about the smell. So sometimes what the man liked to do, this poor man liked to do, was to take his little bit of food that he had, whatever it is, a little bit of bread, maybe a sardine or something that someone had given him, and go sit near the bakery and smell that. It made his meal seem so much richer and so much better, and he would just love it. He would savor his little bit of food that he had and then smell that wonderful, wonderful smell that was coming from the bakery. Now, the baker, on the other hand, was not thrilled with this. Okay, didn't want this fellow sitting outside of his shop. He didn't want him around. So one day he just had it, he's fed up, and he came out and he said, "You're enjoying my smells, huh? Pay me for it. They're mine. I want money." And the poor man said, "Oh, no way. I didn't eat anything of yours. I shouldn't have to pay. I just smelled it. I don't owe you anything." Well, the rich man wouldn't let it go. In fact, he so wouldn't let it go, he dragged the poor man into court and stood in front of a judge and said to the judge, "Look what this man does. He goes out and he enjoys the fruit of my labor. Okay, he smells my cooking, my baking. He enjoys the fruit of my labor and he doesn't pay me anything for it." The judge sat there and thought for a minute and said to the poor man, "I want you to come back tomorrow and I want you to have 4 kopecks with you." The poor man was horrified, but he had to do what the judge said. So he went and he looked and he finally, the next day, he went to someone because he didn't have much and it was cold. So he went and he took his to a pawn shop and he pawned his cloak for the 4 kopecks. So he has them in a bag And he goes back to the judge. And of course, the baker is there really pleased with himself and thrilled that he's, getting this man, because he figures then he's never going to bother him again. So the poor man hands the judge the little bag with the 4 kopecks. The judge takes the bag. He shakes the bag so that you can hear the coins clinking against each other. And he says to the baker, "That is your payment. He smelled your food. You hear his money." And he gave the 4 kopecks back to the poor man, who could then reclaim his cloak. I thought that was kind of clever on the judge's part. I sort of like that, because you could see, worked out very nicely for both of them. So, well, the baker wasn't all that thrilled, but the poor man got the point across. So that is tonight's story.
Thank you.
I need to share a story of a friend of Rich's uncle in California. Was near a deli waiting for somebody, and he walked in and he said, "Can we help you?" And he said, "No, I'm just here for the smells."
There is a restaurant in town called Jimmy John's, and it says smells free, or free smells, whatever.
Yeah. So I have another short story that I want to share with you also this evening. I found it this week. A colleague of mine, Fred Gutman, posted it about porcupines. And I want to call it a parable because I don't think it actually is how porcupines work, but I'll let you see what you think of it. So it's an old story about poor little porcupines who realized how dire the cold was, and they decided that they should group together. But the quills of each one wounded their closest companions, so after a while, they decided they better go their own way, and soon they began to die, alone and frozen. So finally they realized they had to choose, and they had to either accept the quills of their companions or disappear from the earth. So wisely, they decided to go back to being together, and they learned to live with the little wounds that happened sometimes that were caused by the close relationships with their companions and their quills. But the heat that came from the others allowed all of them to survive together. So I say it's a parable because I don't think that's how the quills work on porcupines, actually. I think they go out more when there's danger. So my guess is that they are able to huddle more, but the idea that there are trade-offs and that we need each other, and while we're not going to huddle together right now, physically together, unless we're in the house with somebody else because of COVID, that while we miss the physical closeness in that way, that we find other ways to connect. And even if sometimes we have to work through some rough spots along the way, it's better than being totally alone. So I'm open to your thoughts about the story. I thought it was a cute story about the porcupines, but at the same time, I don't know that that's how porcupines work, but that's okay, to see what you think of that. Any thoughts?
It's nice to have a pet.
Well, this was about porcupines coming together. Sometimes people are more prickly too. Rachel?
I like the story.
Thank you. Rachel, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think that is so true, though, that because we sometimes are around people and we don't always realize people's weak spots and sore spots because we can't read their minds. And sometimes it's good that if somebody does something consistently to let them know, but sometimes there's just going to be something that we rub against each other. And sometimes we just have to kind of say, like, I know what they meant, even if that's not how I first interpreted it. So we try to get along that way better.
Yeah, there was a woman who she was my kid's fourth grade teacher, but I always knew of warm fuzzies, but I never knew about cold pricklies. And she had a story about warm fuzzies and cold pricklies. So she gave these cute little pom-pom figures to all the kids for the warm fuzzy. But, sometimes we get cold pricklies and sometimes warm fuzzies, and we got to figure out how to, I think, try to give more warm fuzzies sometimes, but also how to handle the cold pricklies that may come along the way. Ted, welcome.
You
So-
muted Ted.
Okay, I asked you to unmute, so maybe we can hear you. Okay. No, I'll ask you to unmute one more time, and then maybe you can. You're still muted, Ted. Okay, now.
Okay. Well, I did it on both my places. All right. I can remember one time thinking I was giving a warm fuzzy and I ended up giving a cold prickly instead. I was reminded by it by Rabbi's comment about reading people's minds. I was with someone I hadn't seen in 20 years, and we were together having a little coffee, and she was nonstop talking, and really in a pretty manic fashion, and asked me what I was doing. And I said I was finishing up my residency. And she said, "In what?" And I said, "Psychiatry." And I couldn't help but be aware that at that moment she leaned back for the first time in 5-10 minutes when she was monopolizing the conversation, and other people began talking. And she looked uncomfortable. So I turned to her and I said, "I really can't read people's minds." And she said, "How do you know what I was thinking?"
That's funny. Oh, yeah.
So yes, we try to be empathic, but I learned that sometimes it comes with a price.
Wow.
We find ways to work through it all, hopefully.
Yeah.
So we're here to make Havdalah together, and so as I do each week, I'm putting the blessings in the chat, and then I will also put the songs there next. Just one moment, because I can't seem to cut and paste them all at the same time. I have to do it in 2 installments. So it's just one of those things that consistently happens. And okay, here we go. I'll get the other one in now. Okay, so now we have all of the words, at least in transliteration here, and the English for all of our blessings. So for everyone who has a candle, I invite you to light the candle. And as we have our candles lit, our first blessing is the wine. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la, la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen borei peri hagafen. To take a sip of our wine or juice. And onto the spices, the sweet smelling spices. Oh, actually, I know it's a week early and next week we're doing things for Tu B'Shvat, but for Tu B'Shvat coming, I have my etrog to smell tonight. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei minei v'samim, borei minei v'samim. I can actually smell it before I even put it up to my nose. Though it is smaller than it was before, still, it's a beautiful fragrance. Now for the flame, for the light. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Borei me'orei ha'esh, borei me'orei ha'esh. And we continue with the blessing for Havdalah. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamavdil ben kodesh v'chol, ben or lechoshech, ben yom hashvi'i l'sheshet yemei hamaseh. Baruch atah Adonai hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol. We take another moment or two just to savor these last few moments of Shabbat. And then when you're ready, we put our candles out and our wine or juice. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, Bimera v'yaminu, Yavo Eleinu, Imashiach ben David, Imashiach ben David. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi. I invite you to unmute so we can all sing together Shavuot Tov to wish one another a good week. Shavuot Tov, Shavuot
Shavua
Tov,
Tov,
Shavuot
Shavua
Tov,
Tov,
Shavuot
Shavua
Tov,
Tov,
Shavuot
Shavua
Tov,
Tov,
Shavuot
Shavua
Tov,
Tov,
Shavuot Tov. Good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy
joy
increase.
increase,
A
a
good
good
week,
week,
a week of peace. May gladness reign and
and
joy
joy increase.
increase.
Shavua Tov.
Yeah.
Wish a
During
good week to everyone on Facebook, and we'll see you either next Friday night for Shabbat or next Saturday for Havdalah.